What does it actually take to control the most important waterway in the world? Not the most powerful navy, not the most sophisticated systems, not decades of alliances and security guarantees. Today, the answer became clear, and it came from three specific actions, each one small enough to be dismissed individually. Together, they tell you something about power that no official statement will ever say out loud. Today, America threatened China with 100% tariffs if it kept buying Iranian oil. 100%. The most extreme economic lever available to the American government short of a total embargo. China's response was three words: we don't care. Today, a Japanese tanker crossed the Strait of Hormuz for the first time since this conflict began. It paid Iran in Chinese yuan, not in American dollars. And today, the Wall Street Journal confirmed that Iran is now exporting oil to China by railway around the blockade entirely. Three actions, three countries. One picture. The Strait of Hormuz, the waterway America spent 60 days and $20 billion trying to control, is no longer a neutral international passage. It has a new administration, and today, three separate actions confirmed exactly who that administration answers to. So today, the question is not whether this happened. It did. The question is how it happened, and what it means that it happened today, while America's blockade is still officially in place and America is still officially claiming victory. Let me start with the China story, because we don't care, three words said publicly on the record in direct response to America's biggest available economic threat, is the most significant statement made by any government in this conflict since Iran's foreign minister said America must choose between ceasefire and continued Israeli operations. To understand why those three words matter so much, you need to understand what the blockade was designed to do. The blockade's entire logic depends on cutting off Iran's revenue. If Iran cannot sell its oil, if its primary income source is severed, the economic pressure accumulates until the situation becomes unsustainable for the Iranian side. That is the mechanism. Not direct confrontation, economic strangulation, cut the money, wait for the system to break. China buys more Iranian oil than any other country, by an enormous margin. China is Iran's most important energy customer. And America knew this, which is why the threat was 100% tariffs. The most painful available number, a tax equal to the full value of every Chinese product entering America. China said, we don't care, keep the tariffs, we will keep buying. Now here is what that response does to the blockade's logic. If China keeps buying Iranian oil regardless of American threats, if Iran's primary revenue stream is protected by China's defiance, then the blockade's central mechanism fails, not partially. Structurally, the pressure that was supposed to accumulate until Iran broke is not accumulating. It is being absorbed by China's willingness to absorb the cost of defiance. But here is the part most coverage is missing. China did not just defy America privately, it did it publicly, on the record, in a formal government response, sending a message not just to America but to every country watching, about the limits of American economic leverage when China decides to ignore it. Every government now watching this conflict is updating the same calculation. If China can publicly say we don't care to 100% tariffs and keep doing what it was doing, what does that tell every smaller country about how much weight American economic threats actually carry? It tells them the threats are less credible than they appeared. And that changes behavior everywhere, not dramatically, but consistently. In 100 small decisions by governments that used to defer to American pressure and are now calculating whether they need to. Here's what I want to ask you before we continue. America threatened China with its biggest available economic threat. China said, we don't care publicly, and kept buying. Did you think America's threat would work? Tell me in the comments, because the gap between what was threatened and what actually happened tells you more about where power actually sits than any official statement available. Now let me turn to the second action, because the Japanese tanker is not just a shipping story, it is a financial story, and the financial implications reach far beyond one ship crossing one waterway. A Japanese tanker crossed the Strait of Hormuz for the first time since this conflict began. It paid Iran for passage, in Chinese yuan. Let me explain why the currency matters as much as the crossing itself. The global oil system has been denominated in American dollars since 1974. That arrangement, sometimes called the petrodollar system, is one of the most important structural foundations of American financial power. Because energy is priced in dollars, every country on Earth needs dollars to buy it. That constant global demand keeps the dollar strong, keeps American borrowing costs low, and keeps the global financial system oriented around American institutions. We covered this in the petrodollar video. The point here is simple. Every time a tanker pays for straight passage in yuan rather than dollars, every time an energy transaction is settled outside the dollar system, that foundation erodes slightly, not dramatically, not visibly in any single transaction, but cumulatively. Each yuan payment normalizes the next one. Each transaction outside the dollar system makes the next such transaction more routine. Japan is not a small actor in this story. Japan is the world's third largest economy. Japan has been one of America's closest partners for 80 years. Japan is inside the American financial and security architecture more deeply than almost any other country. Japan paying Iran in yuan to cross the strait is one of America's closest allies, making a financial decision that bypasses the dollar system, because that is what getting energy through the strait now requires. And that decision, once made, sets a precedent for Japan. For every country watching Japan make it. The strait is now a yuan checkpoint. Countries that need to pass through it are making yuan payments to do so. That is the petrodollar system eroding in real time. One tanker at a time. One yuan payment at a time, each one small, all of them adding up in one direction. Now here is where the three actions today connect into one picture that is considerably more significant than any of them individually. China defying tariffs, Japan paying in yuan. Iran exporting oil to China by railway, confirmed by the Wall Street Journal. Three separate things happening on the same day, but they are not three separate things. They are three parts of one system. Think about what the three actions describe together. Iran's oil reaches China by railway, bypassing the strait and the blockade entirely. China buys that oil regardless of American threats, removing the economic pressure the blockade was designed to apply, and Iran selectively opens the strait to countries willing to pay in yuan, turning the waterway into both a revenue source and a financial lever simultaneously. These three things together describe an architecture, not a series of improvised responses to American pressure. A deliberately constructed alternative system for moving Iranian energy to Chinese buyers that operates completely outside the framework American policy was designed to control. The blockade controls access to Iranian ports by sea. It does not control railways. It does not control China's purchasing decisions. It does not control which currency tankers use to pay tolls. Each of those three gaps was filled by railway, by Chinese defiance, by yuan payments, producing a system that the blockade cannot close. Let me use a simple analogy. Imagine you try to stop water flowing through a pipe by blocking the pipe. The water finds three other routes simultaneously, through a gap on the left, through a crack at the bottom, through a completely different pipe you did not know existed. The block is still in place, but the water is flowing anyway, and now it is flowing through routes that are harder to block because you did not build the infrastructure to stop them. That is what happened with the blockade. The pipe is still blocked. The water, Iranian oil, Iranian revenue, Iranian energy exports is flowing through three other routes simultaneously. And those routes were not improvised this week. They were built over months of preparation while the blockade was being constructed. And here is the most important structural point. These three routes are now established. The railway exists, the yuan payment infrastructure exists, China's public declaration that it will ignore American threats exists, and cannot be walked back without China losing face on the global stage. Systems are harder to undo than policies. The architecture that China and Iran built around the blockade will still be there after any ceasefire, after any deal, after any change in the political situation. The strait is administered by Iran, selectively in yuan, for the countries Iran chooses. China protects Iran's primary revenue regardless of American pressure. And the alternative infrastructure that bypasses the strait entirely is already operational. Here is what I want to know. Iran controls the strait. China protects Iran's revenue. The railway bypasses the blockade entirely. In your honest assessment, is there a lever America has left that changes this picture? Tell me in the comments. Let me bring this to the level that matters most for the people watching this video. The yuan payments are not abstract. They travel through the global financial system in ways that eventually reach ordinary people. Every transaction settled in yuan rather than dollars reduces global demand for dollars slightly. The strait processes approximately 135 ships per day at current toll rates in yuan every day. That is a significant and ongoing reduction in dollar demand, building cumulatively into something that affects American borrowing costs, American inflation, and the purchasing power of ordinary American families over time. The railway between Iran and China carries oil that bypasses the blockade. That oil reaches Chinese factories and supply chains at Iranian prices. not at the elevated prices the blockade was supposed to produce. The goods those supply chains make reach global markets with energy costs that reflect the bypassed blockade, which means the economic pressure the blockade was designed to apply is not landing where it was supposed to land. It is being distributed through the global economy in ways that affect prices everywhere, including in countries that have nothing to do with this conflict. And China's public defiance changes the calculations of governments everywhere. Every country watching China say we don't care and pay no meaningful price is updating its own assessment of whether American economic threats are worth complying with. That update happens in finance ministries and trade departments around the world, quietly, in spreadsheets, in policy decisions, in small adjustments to trade routes and currency reserves, each one invisible, all of them adding up. The ordinary person in America, in Europe, in Asia, who has been absorbing elevated energy costs for 60 days, is living inside a system that is being restructured around them. The Strait has a new administrator. The dollar's role in energy trade is being eroded 1 yuan payment at a time. China's defiance is setting precedents that will shape global trade for years. And the costs of that restructuring, like all system costs, will eventually arrive at the person furthest from the decisions that produce them. 3 things happened today. China said, "We don't care" to America's biggest economic threat and kept buying Iranian oil. Japan paid Iran in yuan to cross the strait for the first time since this conflict began. And the Wall Street Journal confirmed Iran is exporting oil to China by railway, around the blockade entirely. 3 actions, 1 picture. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a neutral international waterway. It is an Iranian-administered checkpoint backed by Chinese economic defiance, with an alternative land route making the blockade irrelevant to the most important trade relationship in the region. America spent 60 days and $20 billion trying to change this. China spent nothing, said 3 words, and the strait is theirs. Be skeptical, look at the evidence, follow the incentives, and never stop asking how power actually works. Last question. China said we don't care. Japan paid in yuan. Iran built a railway. 3 actions on 1 day. In your honest view, is there anything America can do now that changes this picture? Tell me in the comments.